Men reclaiming their bodies. We go one-on-one with Wayne Griffiths, the co-founder of Recap. It is a support group for men who are opposed to circumcision and who are undergoing a procedure to make them whole again. It's Foreskin Restoration. Now, some of the pamphlets that Recap has put out, Wayne, contend that, and I'm going to quote you here, that forced amputation of a healthy part of a child's genitals in the name of medicine, religion, or social custom violates his human rights. Did I quote you correctly in saying
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Well, explain.
Well, everyone is entitled to body whole, intact, just as they come out of the womb. And no one has a right to amputate a healthy, functioning piece of tissue for any reason, especially not in America for what they claim are medical reasons, which just don't stand up.
But what about religious reasons?
We do not address those issues. That is for those who feel that they need to discuss among themselves. We have a number of men who are in the Jewish religion, and they are addressing that in their synagogues. And we are only interested in making men aware in America that the forced amputation of their healthy tissue, most sensitive tissue, is against human rights. It's
a human rights question.
It's a human rights question.
There have been many groups here in the Bay Area that have been active for years that are opposed to circumcision. The one located in Marin County, and the name escapes me all of a sudden.
Yes.
No Circ. That's right, No Circ. Have been instrumental in fighting circumcision, or at least trying to get their side of the argument out. Dr. Dean Adele, very popular television personality here in the Bay Area, also has been a leading opponent of circumcision.
Yes, that's true.
To what do you attribute this growing, and I really believe it is a growing movement against it, because I read somewhere only recently that 50% of all babies born today, only 50% are being circumcised. Years ago, it was almost 95%.
That's very true. Well, men are finally being educated, if you want to say, or become aware. I got a letter from a fellow yesterday who said that it took him quite some time to learn algebra. Finally, the light came on. It took him very little time, just within this last month, to realize that what his parents had done to him was not right, and he was very angry.
Well, your group, Recap, is actively involved in the restoration process, and it's a very fascinating process, and I want to talk about that. But first, I would like to talk about circumcision and maybe some of the history involved. What are some of the religious reasons, first of all, if you can at least address those, and then we'll talk about some of the others.
Yeah. When Abraham, in the Old Testament, 4,000 years ago, give or take a few, was told to circumcise himself, what he was instructed to do was to take off just that forward from the glands as a symbol of the sacrifice of the Jehovah, the Christ to come. That went on for a couple of thousand years. In about 140 A.D., when the Jewish uprising took place, and they got their freedom, for perhaps the last time as such in that historical era, the leaders decided that because many Jewish men prior to that time, because they still had a foreskin, everybody from Abraham on down to the turn of to Christ's time, or 140 A.D., all had foreskins.
And we were designed that way.
Yes, well, yes. They had a little bit of it taken off, but they still had the majority of it.
Well, you're talking about after they circumcised themselves.
Yes, after they were circumcised.
They at least retained something.
They retained the coverage of the glands. And in about 140 A.D., as I say, at the uprising that took place, the Jewish leaders decided that they would make sure that no Jewish man would ever become integrated or pass for either a Greek or Roman, a Gentile. And so they devised a circumcision that is called the bris pariah, which denudes everything all the way back past the glands. And they were told to do it 7 times if necessary to make sure that every shred was gone. Well, that has come down through the centuries. Even back then, during the Roman times, there were many men who were seeking restoration, and a physician, Celsius, I think his name was, and devised a surgery that would cover the glands. I'm not sure how successful it is. We don't have any other than the record of him doing it. And during World War II, many Jewish physicians, as well as others, were frantically trying to find ways to cover the glands again so that what the Nazis did would not happen. Some were successful, but
yeah, but
not.
but in World War II, we're talking about recent history, and at that time, many other Christian faiths were, I mean, not in ceremonies as specific and as religious as the bris, but other Protestant and Catholic religions were doing the same thing.
Yes, that's very true. At the turn of the century, coming into this modern era, many of the physicians said that circumcision would stop masturbation, tuberculosis, and insanity, and a host of other diseases.
Well,
and so
I think there are still a lot of insane men who masturbate.
I don't think it stopped any masturbation. That's very true. Obviously, just like tonsils and everything else, they have finally decided on those things, but not circumcision, that they're taking them out doesn't do any good, or cutting it off doesn't do any good. And so we're finally getting to a point where the men are beginning to scream because they're finally aware that what was taken from them, one of the most sensitive parts of their bodies. Dr. John Taylor from Manitoba did a study, and there are more nerve endings in the foreskin, especially at the end of it, than there are in the glands. And his comment at the end of his presentation was, the glands is a dumb organ compared to the foreskin.
Well, I've read somewhere once where there are 15 square inches of extra skin on a man's penis that are taken off in circumcision. Is that correct? 15
square inches of adult skin is removed from a child. It's not that much then, but it would grow to be that. And it's not just skin. It is a structure that has a function in intercourse and in sex.
All right, well, what is that? What is that function?
The function is to give a what do you want to call it, a gliding tube for the shaft of the penis to go in and out of during intercourse. And the foreskin moves back and forth across especially the corona of the glands, and excites the man. That's his enjoyment. In addition to that, it provides the mechanism so that the female does not get chafed. I mean, the doctors today are prescribing, well, get lotions and use lubricants and everything else, and that is not as true for men who have foreskins, because they have that gliding mechanism that does not chafe the woman.
So once again, the Creator really knew what he was doing, or she was doing when,
I agree with
she
that.
or he made us.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So the purpose of the foreskin is really for pleasure and for protection and for a million other things.
Yes.
Where did the notion, especially among modern medicine, and I'm saying modern dating back, 100 years at least, where did that notion come that foreskin was just nothing more than a place where disease is born?
Well, in a child, the foreskin does not retract because it's not supposed to. It is, as you might say, still undeveloped and still part of the glands. The inner surface of the foreskin and the glands is not a separate organ at that point. And what happens when they circumcise is they stick a probe down in between the foreskin and the glands and rip it apart. And all circumcised men have some scarring on the glands, which doesn't help it at all. And then they retract it. And the doctors have thought for years that, oh, you've got to retract it. but you're not supposed to because it's not retractable yet. It might not be retractable until you're 17. You know, it usually happens about 3 to 5 years old that it can be retracted, and the boy should be allowed to do that. It does protect it from disease. When you look at the studies that Tommy Wiswell and Eddie Schoen have done here in the United States, showing that lots of UTIs and
What is that?
urinary tract infections and other kinds of diseases happen if you don't cut it off, are completely disproved by international studies.
European men.
Of European men who they don't circumcise at all, maybe a total of 1 to 6% at the way outside. And they do not have the same problems that Eddie and Tommy say are going to happen if you don't circumcise. Their rates of UTIs are statistically the same as ours.
Dr. Dean Adele has cited many, many studies over the years, too, on both his radio and his television program that discount a lot of those medical theories. Yet, if here in 1994, you still have a room full of doctors, medical doctors, these are the same doctors who may also continue to think that chiropractors are quacks. How are you going to convince Americans that circumcision is a healthy alternative, or that non-circumcision is a healthy alternative?
Remaining intact. Well, I think that what is happening since the publication of the book on the joy of uncircumcising, which explains how to restore, is that men are becoming aware, and neither recap nor no circ or no harm are trying to get converts. That's not what we're there for. We're here to provide information to let men know what it is, and we've got thousands of men who have written and called and requested information and are doing something about what has been done then to at least recover the glands, to regain some sensitivity that has been lost because of the keratinization of the glands.
I would like to give you some history of mine, just so, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners, both men and women, can relate to this. I have 3 sons. My first born in 1979, and I remember the doctors asking, well, circumcised? I said, of course. It was, of course. Like father, like son. The second child was born 5 years later. And interestingly enough, here in San Francisco at Mount Zion Hospital, which at the time was still a Jewish hospital predominantly, but and I think even the attending physician asked me, do you want your son circumcised? And I said, yes. And she said, are you sure? And I had never been asked, are you sure, or even been challenged on the issue at that point. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she went into this long list of pros and cons. She gave me a real good, I think, medical perspective on circumcision. And I was rather captivated, but I still chose to do it. She said, well, if you do choose to have your son circumcised, I would like you to be there and watch the procedure. And I did, and I was horrified.
Yes.
When my third son was born, 3 years later, we chose to keep him intact.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing some arguments. Oh, your kids will look different. I said, well, they all have different hair color. They all have different eye color. One has freckles and the other doesn't, and the other, they're all different in every other way. What difference does their penis make? And that might have been a rationalization, but now that my youngest son is 8 years old and the oldest is 15, and none of them have ever had a problem with what their penises look like, I really think that I was right in that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to try to, especially the medical profession, you have got to be the cleanest, you have to be, and little boys cannot take care of themselves, but little girls can. The girls have probably, I don't know, I'll say this sort of on the outside, 100 times as much area that produces smegma, which is a natural secretion to keep everything clean. And we don't go about, and everyone would be horrified, as I am, to even consider that we would circumcise baby girls.
But girls are circumcised in many parts of the world.
That's very true, but not here in America. Very few here. Although with the influx of immigrants from other countries, they are requesting it to be done, and the American community is just up in arms about it, and I don't blame them. But why aren't we just as much in arms about boys being cut? They're
doing it
to their
for
body.
entirely different reasons, though. It's more of a male domination over women to have girls circumcised than anything else.
That's
It's a
true,
whole other custom.
but in every society that circumcises girls, they circumcise the boys.
I see.
So it's done to both of them, but nobody wants to talk about, because as some of the feminists have said, well, if they can't stand to have a little piece of skin cut off, what can they stand? Well, it's a human rights issue. If the girls are entitled to whole bodies, boys are entitled to whole bodies. What's so different? Is there some reason that we should be prejudiced against boys and cut them up and mutilate them? We don't do it to girls, and so that's why it is a human rights issue. And one of the reasons I think that the physicians here have been, whatever you want to call it, brainwashed, uninformed about
or perhaps misinformed
about what the structure and function of the foreskin is because the teachers that are teaching them in the universities don't have the faintest idea what it's all about. The only thing they know about a foreskin is, that's supposed to be cut off. I mean,
And then we go back and use old research to back up our argument.
That's very true.
Is that what you're saying?
That's very true, yes. The main reason in America that the European physicians feel that we're having and seeing so many problems is that the birthing methods are wrong. Over in Europe, they birth quite naturally. Birth is not a disease in Europe. Birth is a disease in America, according to the doctors. That's the kind of approach they have to it. So they sterilize the rooms as best they can, and instead of allowing the child to bond with the mother and get feces and whatever over him, to get the mother's E. coli and other protective bacteria on them, they wash them, split them, take them apart, run them away from each other, and so they get infections.
Well, I think there is some truth to that. I mean, I think birthing in and of itself has changed dramatically in this country just in 20 years.
Yes,
dramatically.
That's very true. But the doctors in Europe say that about circumcision, for instance, the American physicians are barbaric. Our society is barbaric to do this. We don't have the problems because we birth naturally in Europe that concerning circumcision and UTIs and stuff that you have in America. And it's because of your birthing procedures in America, not because you do or don't circumcise.
All right, well, let's just refresh people's memories that Wayne Griffiths, who my guest is, and we're speaking to right now, is a co-founder of a group called RECAP, based here in the Bay Area. And RECAP has been instrumental in a restoration of the foreskin. It is a process. I guess it's not surgical. It's not that we're taking some skin and sewing it back on. It's nothing like that. There's no bobitization involved here.
No.
But it is the process of stretching the skin that's already there, that's left over, and stretching it over the head of the penis over a period of time.
Yes, that's
All
true.
right, well, that's the way I'm going to explain it. I would like you to explain it more thoroughly, if you would.
Well, there are surgical procedures that are available, but they're extremely costly, and the percentage of success is 60 to 70%. When you do it by yourself or under a doctor's care, if you need one, most men have never gone to the doctors who took it off as such to have them help restore it. What you have to do is apply the medical principles of skin expansion, and that means to keep the shaft skin in traction. And when you keep it in traction over a period of time, new cells are grown, just like you would get fat or whatever. You grow more skin to cover your body. And what you're essentially telling the penile shaft skin is that I am much bigger than you thought I was. I need to be longer. And yes, it takes probably at least, depending on how tightly cut you are or not, a year and a half to 2 or 3 years.
Really?
Yes.
All right, well, explain how this works. You said you put yourself in traction, so that means you have something attached to your penis.
Yes.
For a year and a half to 3 years?
Yes. Right.
Please.
It's worth it. I assure you I've done it. First of all, most everybody starts by using some kind of taping method. That is, you pull the skin forward over the glands and you tape it so that that skin behind the tape is in traction. After a few months or a while, maybe 6-8 months or so, you are in what we might call equilibrium. It doesn't seem to want to stretch anymore. So you have to use some kind of device. There are hundreds of homemade devices that have been used over the period of years, especially since the 1980s, when this sort of caught on, I guess, as to being available to be done. And there are now a couple of devices available to weights that you insert. They're shaped with a cup in them, and you put them on the glands, you pull the skin over it, and you tape it. And the weights range, depending on what you can tolerate, anywhere from about 10 ounces to some men can wear 18 and 20 ounces, which is too much for me. 10 ounces is fine for me. It took me about a year and a half of making my own device, which is now called the Foreballs, Foreballs, and a new device that's available called the PUD, Prepuce Uncircumcising Device.
How apropos.
How apropos. PUD, yes. In which it has a cup. It's a shaft of stainless steel. These are both stainless steel. Has a cup. It has a hole through which you can urinate so that you don't have to take it off during the day. And you tape the skin, and so you walk around with some weight on, and it stretches.
Is this painful?
No.
Is it cumbersome?
I suppose somewhat. It gets you get used to it. Everything is a habit. Should not.
Can it show through your clothes?
Depends on what clothes you wear or whatever. Yes, some men sort of wear long underwear to hold it closer to their leg and stuff, so that it can still do weight. We do not advocate doing anything that hurts. If you're hurting, you're not doing it right. That's all there is to it. I mean, you just cannot allow that to happen. It's your body, so you have to take care of it. And the success stories are unbelievable. How
many men? I mean, I'm sitting here really fascinated by all this because I can't imagine walking around with weights on my penis all day long. But there has been a growing movement among a lot of men to restore their foreskin.
Yes.
What kind of men are we talking about? Are these men who've had, let me ask, are these the kind of men who've had sexual dysfunctions or perhaps second or third marriages or bad sex lives, or what is going on with them emotionally? I'm very happy with my situation. I can't imagine what would happen to me emotionally that would make me want to do this.
Well, it's amazing when some men just right up front are extremely angry, are wanting to sue parents and doctors for what's been done to them. They are aware of what they're missing. How, I don't.
How would they be aware? I have nothing to compare it to. What would they have it to compare it to?
I don't know. I haven't really asked them that. In the support group, we try and deal with their anger if they wish to discuss it and help them to feel better about themselves. And as many have said, some of the process of healing is doing restoration. One fellow in the San Rafael area was so angry that he said, I can't even consider restoration. He said, I want to go and hang these people that have done this to me. I mean, he was that angry about it. And I don't know how he determined it was different, but he felt that he had been robbed. Mm-hmm. We have doctors, lawyers, technicians, nurses, people, truck drivers, you name it. There's a total variety of men from every walk of life.
How many
Well,
are involved in your support groups, I mean?
Well, we have about 6 or 7 support groups. There'll be a new one starting in next, the 13th down in the Los Angeles area.
March 13th?
March the 13th. Our meeting is March the 6th here in the city.
Which is the day this program airs?
Yes.
Sunday?
Yes.
Okay.
And on the mailing list, just my mailing list, and there are others around, I have over 2,000 men.
That's incredible. And they're all Northern California men, or
Oh, no.
statewide?
All over.
Statewide?
We have men from, maybe 100 from Canada. We have
I
maybe
see.
40 or 50 from, well, not quite that many, from 30 or so from Australia. We have England, doctors from England, as well as others over there that are doing something about it.
So you've done this process, and are you
Yes.
finished with it? It's done.
Essentially, yes, I'm
Okay.
finished
And it
with
took you a year and a half, you
a
said.
year and a half, really, to
So you
to
were
get coverage.
circumcised, and now you're covered, and you've
And
got your
I-
foreskin back. And
Well,
are you
I
happy?
have my coverage back. Let's
Okay.
put it that way.
Are you happy with what it looks like?
Oh, yes. I have fooled several doctors in doing physicals every year. They have said, is everything okay under your foreskin? And as I retract my foreskin, I say, you mean underneath my restored foreskin? Everything is just fine. There's dead silence. And then they
I think
go on to something
you
else.
get off on that, don't you?
Well,
I
I
can
don't
kinda
know.
tell.
I mean, it's funny that they just don't want to discuss it.
Yeah. Well, what don't they want to discuss?
I don't know. I don't press the subject. I mean, if they don't want to.
And if I get too personal, just say so. But
Certainly.
has it improved your sex life?
Oh yes, absolutely.
It's improved your
Oh,
sensation.
Yes. A fellow phone, mine, yes, and others I know. A fellow phone from Texas, and he said, "I've only been stretching about 5 months now, and I'm able to keep the glands covered." But he said, when I have sex with my girlfriend, wow, is it good? That I never have had this.
I'm wondering how much of that might be placebo or power suggestion.
Well, certainly we don't suggest anything other than we say that when you take the keratinization off of the glands, there is more sensitivity there.
Have there been people involved in your organization or gone to your support groups or have gone through the process who have felt no difference, or who might not be happy with how they look, who are not as happy with what the penis looks like?
No? I really can't say. I've only had about 3 negative letters and or phone calls. One from a woman said, "How could you want to have such a filthy, dirty thing?" And I would never have oral sex with someone who has a foreskin. And then a couple of men who have said, "Hey, I'm very happy the way I am," and that's very true.
Has it changed your self-esteem?
Well, I guess you must understand that I have never really felt badly about myself. I'm like you. I don't blame my mother or father. They did what they thought was the best at the time. I feel good about myself in all that I do. I enjoy my work and all this kind of stuff. I enjoy myself, and so I just feel more comfortable because I guess when I get up in the morning and go in and look in the mirror and start to shave, I can say, "Oh yeah, you look like you're supposed to."
Well, this is very fascinating. We're out of time, but I would like to give at least a telephone number if people are interested in joining your support group or learning more information or getting in touch with other groups that perhaps could help them with whatever issues they're dealing
Yeah,
with.
certainly they can phone and leave a message if I'm not there at 510-827-4077. Or if they want to fax me a request, they can do it to 510-827-4119.
Very good. Wayne Griffiths of Recap. Thank you very much for joining us. Coming up next,